But I want to say a little bit about the Churchill Archives Centre in the college, because there really are some significant connections there with Denmark. Because it contains Sir Winston's personal papers. So it's a presidential library in US terms. Actually, much more than that, because many people obviously wanted to be with that particular collection. So it's also got the papers of Margaret Thatcher. And what can I say? There is a third prime minister, but we're not going to announce exactly yet. And 600 other collections. It's a very, very significant historical collection. People in politics, civil servants, the military, scientists, and engineers. So in the Archive Centre are the originals of those speeches which we know about and from Sir Winston. And as Piers Brendan, who was the keeper of the archives and a historian, has said, Churchill was a verbal Vulcan who mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. It's a great line. And as warlord, Churchill wrote with clarity, cogency, and brevity. He rejected bureaucratic terminology, not local defense volunteers, but home guard. Yeah? Not communal feeding centers, but British restaurants. You may not be able to get a good meal in one, he said, but at least you feel you've eaten well if you've been to a restaurant. He rejected jargon, such as the American term top secret. Secrecy, he said, is not to be measured in altitude. If it were so, many might think bottom secret would be more forceful and suggestive. Indeed, he was a stickler for precision at all times. On one airborne journey, his valet Sawyers pointed out that the Prime Minister was sitting on his hot water bottle and remarked, "Not a good idea." And Churchill replied, "It's not an idea, it's a coincidence." So the histories of Denmark and Churchill are deeply linked, and this is particularly resonant this week. And it's a week for us to remember and to give thanks and to celebrate, because on Monday, that marked the 70th anniversary, in fact, of Churchill, Monday this week, the 70th anniversary of Churchill coming to power, and he was Prime Minister of a coalition government. Now, thank you. There are surely lessons to be learned in the present coalition government by Messrs. Cameron and Clegg. But if you think of what Churchill had to face in those days, yeah, he had to bring together all of the parties across the whole spectrum. He had Bevan in his cabinet across the whole spectrum. He had to make about 60 ministerial appointments in total, as well the cabinet. But within 5 days, he had actually to fly to France. He was called to France by the French government, and he witnessed the disintegration of the French will to fight, with the papers being wheeled out of the offices to be burned in a pile. He was asked in his inimitable French, where is the strategic reserve? Où est la masse de manœuvre? And aucune was the answer. There was nothing. And he knew then that his only ally, apart from the Commonwealth, was actually going to fall. Britain was going to be alone. Hitler and Stalin, remember, were allies at that time, and the US was neutral. Yeah. So an astonishing, it's hard for us to imagine what it was like in those early days of his premiership, with the UK standing alone. But I don't want to go on to that. I want to go on to 5 years, to VE Day, Victory in Europe, and that was the 8th of May, so I guess this was Saturday, I guess, wasn't it? And that was marked at the Cenotaph, and that's 65 years on. So what I've brought is actually I've got some facsimiles here, which you may wish to see, and they're a selection of those, Your Excellency, which you now have in your possession from the reception which you kindly hosted for us to celebrate our 50th. So these particular telegrams are the exchanges between Winston Churchill and Montgomery. Now, the background is that it goes back to Bletchley Park. In addition to intercepting and decoding the German signals, we were also intercepting and decoding the Russian signals, allegedly our allies. Yeah? And there was also a China-Japan office, etc. And an order from, many of you will know this story, I'm sure, an order from Stalin to his commanders in the field was intercepted, and it was to take Denmark, to cut off Denmark, so that Denmark would become a part of what became the Eastern Bloc and part of the Soviet domain. This was intercepted, and Churchill ordered Montgomery to get there first. Yeah? So here is Churchill's telegram, and it says, "Personal and top secret from Prime Minister to Field Marshal Montgomery. I am concerned to hear of the delay of 24 hours in the passing of your armor into Denmark. We attribute the greatest importance to forestalling the Russians either in Copenhagen or in any part of Denmark." And he goes on from there. And I now have the reply from Montgomery. And if any of you wish, you can have a look at these. But I assure you, they are facsimiles, so they're not worth taking away, in case you wish, right? So, personal for Prime Minister from FM Montgomery with copy to SIGs. I guess they're commanders. "I have just received your number 2904. I am watching the situation in Denmark very closely and do not think you need to have any concern. I have good communications with Dowing. I have this morning received a report from him that there is good order in Copenhagen, that German troops are keeping to barracks, and that there are no disorders elsewhere in Denmark. He reports," this is interesting for what I will say in a moment as well, "he reports no trouble from the resistance movement and has no confirmation of presence of any Russians anywhere." And it continues. So these are the exchanges between Montgomery and Churchill. And the interesting thing, of course, is the date. What is the date? Well, you remember that the victory in Europe, I said, was the 8th of May. These are dated, both of them, the 6th of May. Yeah? The 7th of May was the formal military signing by the Germans, and it was ratified in Berlin on the 8th. It was a very, very close-run thing. Yeah.